broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Those of you in the room and those of you online, because I know there are a couple of you online today. I would like to introduce Alyssa and Maisie from the Scholarly Commons. They're going to talk to you today about designing infographics with Piktochart. And I will now turn it over to them.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So we do have just a little bit of a program lined up for you folks today. This session we like to teach in kind of two parts. We like to teach a part about general infographic principles, kind of best practices. So with any software tool that you might be using, you can kind of keep those things in mind. And then we spend just a little bit of time actually looking at some finished infographics that other places have made. And we like to do just a little bit of like evaluation, kind of talk about what we like, what we don't like. And since this is a hybrid session, we're going to maybe do a little more talking than we would normally like to do, but we'll also pass the mic around if you folks have commentary you'd like to give. And then finally, we really dig into Piktochart, which is a browser-based software that's really going to allow you to immediately start working on infographics. So it comes with a lot of templates. It's a really great resource. And you can actually access quite a bit of the content for free. So a pretty great tool to add to your toolkits. And as Laura said, I am Alyssa, and this is Maisie, and we're both graduate students at the School of Information Sciences, and we're also both employees at the main library. So just to start off, I'm going to actually turn it over to Maisie, who's going to do the portion on just design principles.
Hey, hi y'all, I'm Maisie. So obviously this is designing infographics with Piktochart. And one of the big things we really like to emphasize with infographics is that 90% of all information we retain is visual. Brains process visual information many times faster than it does written or oral information. So we want to talk a little bit about some good design methods and practices, some strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll go over Piktochart. So some of the really basic things about infographics is that you're using data to tell a story. Most often this is numeric data, it doesn't have to be. And you have a couple things you want to focus on, which is, for instance, clarity. You want to keep information as clear and easy to read as possible. You have to assume with an infographic that the people encountering it won't have you there to explain it. So you need it to be as clear in a glance as possible, which also plays a lot into the visual design. You want to make sure your layout makes sense. You want to make sure that the content is grouped in a way that makes sense. We talk a lot about complementary colors. We also really like to emphasize this idea of hierarchy of information. So you want to make sure you're putting enough information across that it doesn't feel top or bottom heavy, but also that it's telling a coherent narrative and that no one gets lost in the middle. Part of this is rich graphics. Piktochart is super nice because it has a lot of easy to use graphics, but in general you want your infographic to have a lot of curb appeal, sort of. You want to have things that not only make sense with your topic, but make your data look really nice and appealing to just, the everyday person. But because it's a visual medium, you don't want it to be too wordy. You want to keep your wording kind of succinct, kind of to the point. And you also, again, going back to this idea of multiple hierarchy levels, you want to make sure it's structured almost like you would structure a paragraph or an essay. You want to have like some of your introductory material up top, your less obvious material more in the middle, and you want to end with a takeaway message. This is sort of the thesis of your paper, but it's the thesis of your infographic. So this can be a punchline about this is what this data means, or a call to action like learn more at our webpage here. And that just allows people to kind of understand what they were supposed to get away from, or walk away from this paper with. So we have some examples, which is my favorite. And so I'm going to scroll through this example a little. This is actually an example from Piktochart using the Piktochart program. One of the big things you can see is they have some pretty bold colors up top. One thing I really love about this infographic is they limit themselves to 2 fonts. In graphic design, in the graphic design world, it's kind of good sense to only have 2 fonts. You want to have one serif font, so you know the ones with like Times New Roman with the little extra kind of carets attached to them, and one sans serif font, so something like Arial. So here, for instance, advantages of Medicare US would be your serif font, and a private insurance health plan would be your sans serif. There's also a lot of bright colors, but there's still some very consistent layout on here. They've got the consistent check boxes, which also kind of lines up with this sort of like flip book style they've created. And they break things down into pictures and images and icons with just a brief description. So, you know, it catches the eye, but it still explains things. And it contains a takeaway message. I will say this one has kind of a long takeaway message because it's a full paragraph. Typically, you want it to be more like 1 to 2 sentences.
The other thing I really like about this one in particular is that they pick a few very relevant icons and they keep using them throughout the whole graphic. So especially since it's medical related, they have, of course, the Red Cross. And so it really kind of helps tie together the whole thing because you keep seeing those elements and it keeps reminding you of those same themes.
Yes, yeah, and even the choice to have red reoccur throughout really ties that together. This is another one, and I think this one is an example a lot because it's about child mortality, and it is colorful, but in a way that still feels respectful. It is very easy to accidentally make a very bright and colorful, you know, infographic about something really horrible. And I think this one does a good job keeping it serious. One thing they do that's really nice is they include kind of these pull-out numbers, for instance, that 185 deaths in Sierra Leone, as well as like the pull-out map and the graphs. And so it pulls out relevant data in a way that a person just walking up to it can still kind of locate themselves in the information. They also, like the previous one, do a nice job picking relevant icons, which really catch the eye and add to that visual appeal. And they also do a good job of including kind of minimal information, or maximum information with minimal writing. And one interesting thing they've done is their takeaway message or action taken here is actually divided into 3 separate categories that are about a sentence each. So it's still kind of, here's the next step without being quite as overwhelmed as the previous one was.
And then we do also have a couple examples of, well, what we would probably consider not very good infographics. I don't think, are either of them made in Piktochart? We haven't successfully found a bad infographic in Piktochart yet. I guess we could make one. But just as an example of how you can kind of take these principles a little too far.
This is one of my favorites because I have no idea what it means. And I once spent an hour and a half trying to figure out what it meant, and I couldn't. This is about the organizational chart of the House Democrats Health Plan. As you can see, there's a lot going on color-wise. There's a lot of colors. I usually tell people to limit to like 4 to 5 colors. This has way more than that. Also, the colors aren't consistent. The blues, for instance, don't all mean the same kind of thing. So some of them are organizations and some of them aren't. The fonts are kind of all over the place. They have some pretty random organization. There's no takeaway message. I'm pretty sure it's intentionally poorly designed at this point because I can't.
If you look at the source, it's Republican staff.
Yes, yeah.
But the heading is Democratic staff, so yes, I would say that.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah.
It's,
I don't think that's an accident.
Yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of amazing. I've definitely fallen down the rabbit hole of looking through this one. And then the other one we have, I also really love because again, it's just kind of terrible. And it's called When Social Media Attacks. Some of the things you can kind of tell, it's very text heavy. And there's a lot of icons, but the icons are kind of an unclear meaning. This is another one I spent way too long trying to figure out what it's saying. Because sometimes the red figures are good and sometimes they're not. And like it's the gray characters are inconsistent in what they represent. It's also really hard to read. Not only because there's a lot of text, but because the text is basically all one size, basically all one font, really squished together, and not organized in a cohesive manner. Occasionally there's like one or two words that are highlighted in red, but those are all just the word solution, so it's not like it's really pulling much out. And it's hard to tell that these are actually two paragraphs each because it all kind of blends into one paragraph.
So does anyone, we'll just pause for a second if anyone has questions about things that we've covered so far. And I know folks online might have to type, so we'll just give them a minute if they have anything, or you folks, of course.
The only thing I've gotten questions online so far is maybe it's kind of hard to hear. Oh, maybe get the microphone a little bit closer.
Okay, will do. So one thing I am going to quickly point out, we talked, if you have questions afterwards, first off, please do contact the library because we love getting questions. It's why we go into library science. But the other thing is on the university webpage, we have these things called LibGuides, which are library guides. They're pretty easy to get to. From the homepage, you just go into the orange tab, or the homepage, which is library.illinois.edu. You go into the orange tab labeled Library Guides, Search Guides, and then Infographics. That one-handed typing, sorry, one moment. And this top guide, Infographics, covers not only what we're talking about today and these kind of principles of design, they also talk you through Piktochart and some of the other design programs you can use. So it's a good resource to have. Yeah, and so if you're here in person, the information we go over is also in your handout. Oh, sorry, y'all. But also our email is reflib@library.illinois.edu. So I'm just going to throw that out there. And then I'm going to go ahead.
You can also contact your, institute librarians.
Mm-hmm.
Me or Susan Braxton or Ann Huber. And we'll be happy to help you out. Or if we can't, make sure we get you to someplace where you can get help.
Yeah, that's the best thing about librarians. They're good at finding other resources. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Alyssa to go over Piktochart proper. And please do interrupt us if you have any questions because we're going to go over a lot.
So this is the point if you do happen to have your laptop with you, or if you're at home and you would like to follow along, I will try to make it easy for you to do so. If you don't, that's just fine as well, because I'll be demonstrating everything that I'm trying to show you folks about. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Piktochart is just a browser-based software. So there is no real downloadable desktop component. It's going to work all in your browser of choice. You can always get started from piktochart.com. And I've got that typed in up there. It is spelled with a K, so I don't know how easy that is to see, Pikto chart.com. And I'll go ahead and just visit their homepage. And so, of course, they have all kinds of promotional material for their own purposes. But as we mentioned, it's pretty easy to get started with just a free account. So if you don't already have one, they make it very easy. There's a sign up button here up in the upper right-hand corner. And you don't have to attach yourself to any kind of institutional account. If you'd like it on your Illinois email, of course, feel free. But to my knowledge, unless you know of anything new, there aren't any particular benefits to having an EDU address. So mine is just attached to my Gmail account. So it's just really wherever you prefer. And I would recommend unchecking the subscribe to newsletters box because like any commercial product, they will gladly flood your inbox with their promotional materials.
The only nice thing about the newsletter is occasionally they do free trials of the premium version, which is the paid version. And I always take advantage of those because it's fun to play around on. But.
That is true. If you intend on using it a lot, that is a good point. Maisie has benefited from that more than once. Okay, so we already have an account, so I'm actually going to go back to this homepage, but please do set one up if you feel so inclined. And ours, I will log into. Okay, so we can start getting a look at our dashboard here. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, but I actually kind of like the dashboard layout, and they change it periodically, but I think they've made some good improvements to it. Piktochart has expanded to offer more than just infographics. They do now allow you to use their tools to make what they call presentations and printables. So basically, you can make like the equivalent of a PowerPoint or a flyer. So really the difference between those three options on here, infographic, presentation, and printable, now is that it'll give you a different size background to work on. So it can kind of help you format things in that kind of way. There's other infographic softwares like Canva that actually offer background sizes that are meant for like social media or things like that. So if you do a lot of social media promotion, there are some infographic softwares that you can get like a special Facebook banner sized template or things like that. At the moment, Piktochart doesn't have that, but maybe they will someday if they change it. But when you log in, oh, I'm sorry, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say, you can change the sizes pretty easily in Piktochart though, and I know
That is true.
I make all the banners for like the main library social media in Piktochart, so it is pretty versatile.
That is true. If you know the size that you need, you can change it. So thank you. When you first log in, you probably won't see a whole lot here, but we have presentations we've made in the past, so those will just show up right here. So you can come in here to edit something you've previously been working on, or of course, you can just choose to make a brand new visual. And that option will be up here in the top right-hand corner. You can narrow it down a little bit to start from a specific type of visual if you want a little more context for what you're working on. Do you notice that the templates that are free tend to kind of rotate in here? So, oh, seasonally, okay. So I didn't realize it was seasonally, but every time I come in here, the templates are slightly different. So if you've really fallen in love with one, you might make something out of it to kind of save the template for the future. Because it's usually maybe, I guess, 8 or 9 in here at any given time that you can start working with. These are specifically for the infographics. As I mentioned, there are a few different looking templates for presentations and for printables, which can be kind of fun if you're doing something more for the physical medium rather than online. But since this is supposed to be an infographic workshop, I think I will go ahead and pick one of these templates. Let's see what looks interesting. I kind of like this customer journey template. So you can preview things if you want ahead of time to get a better idea of what you're working with. It looks like this one has a fun name, Tangerine. And all of this will be able to be changed. So don't worry if the topic doesn't match what you want or if the icons aren't quite right. It really just gives you a basis to start with. And this one, it looks like it does have that really nice call to action set up here kind of at the end. So I'm definitely going to pick this one because I like where it's going. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Use Template option. And it'll take it just a minute to load all the pieces in here. Okay, so now we are in the actual Piktochart workspace. So this is where you'll do all your major editing, and this is where all the fancy bells and whistles are. Some of the first things you'll notice when you get in here is that the way that Piktochart structures their infographics is it breaks them into blocks. So you can edit basically one piece of the presentation at a time, which can be really great because it doesn't feel as overwhelming that way. If you're having to work on an entire, legal length thing at one time, it's kind of hard to feel like you really have a handle on it. But with this title here is just one block. And you can tell the division between the blocks with these little break lines. I don't know what the official name is for them. And you can actually just use those to move the blocks as you see fit. So it's really flexible. But that's always, when I go into work on a Piktochart, that's kind of how I think of it because it just helps me to break it down. So once you realize that, of course, you can just scroll through, see your whole thing that you're working on. You can add and remove blocks pretty easily. The tools are a little hidden, so I always like to show those off first because just in case you do want to make drastic changes to a template that you find. You can clone existing blocks. So for no particular reason at all, I could make 2 titles on this infographic. And it gives you an undo button immediately. So I can just say, why would I ever do that, and get rid of it. But you can also just go ahead and change the order of your blocks. You can delete one entirely, or you can even just add a blank block. And it will kind of keep that base theme for the template that you're using. So you can just ad infinitum keep adding blocks into your presentation. And I will say that, I don't know if we explicitly mentioned this, so I will mention it now, is that generally infographics are pretty targeted to be viewed online. A lot of times they don't fare as well when you print them out because the scale isn't really meant for print. So if you are making something that you do expect to distribute in print, you might just think about the scale a little bit and how to handle that. Because the ones we showed, obviously, they stretch quite lengthy. Okay, so other things you'll notice here, of course, you can title your presentation. Whoops, excuse me. Very easy, although a little different than a lot of conventional editing programs, so kind of good to remember where that is. And then what you'll see is all the main menu options here over on the left-hand side. So this is where you're going to get all those great infographic tools that you really would come to Piktochart for. So you'll be able to add all kinds of shapes and icons in different color schemes. And they actually have instituted a pretty good controlled vocabulary, so you can really search for exactly what you're looking for, which I think is a really big strength of Piktochart, because you don't have to scroll endlessly looking through shapes for exactly what you want. So I wonder if they have any medical. And sure enough, we can see in color, in mono, whatever we want. We can quickly get access. And if you want to add a new graphic, you can either just click. And I didn't make that a very good color for this presentation, so I can actually go right ahead and change it. And it's going to offer me the theme colors right here at the top. So super helpful to help you stick to your planned color scheme. And then, as you can see, I can really just use the mouse to drag this wherever I want it. You can also use the keyboard to do the same thing, whatever you're most comfortable with. But you can either click, you can click and drag. It's very, very flexible. So I find Piktochart to be pretty intuitive. A lot of the things you expect to be able to do, it will do them. And a lot of things, there are multiple ways to go about the same task. So I do appreciate that. So there I added a new graphic. You can use keyboard commands to duplicate graphics as well if you really want, so you don't have to keep matching the sizes to each other. So I can use Control-C, Control-V, and then I have another matching heart to put here on the other side. And you'll see that it has these kind of dynamic markers as I move around the screen. So it's really going to help you to get things just in the right place. So those are the icons. This is new, and I do think, do you have to pay for these, Maisie?
So the
They
animated
just
icons,
introduced these.
yeah, are like a month old, and they are something you have to pay for, which is a good time to note. Pictochart is kind of a premium software, so there's a free version that has like 90% of it, and then there's a few perks for if you pay. I will say I've used the paid version, and it is not worth the money. There's like some fun tools, like the animated icons, and like they have this option for like building a color scheme that's kind of helpful, but it's not worth it. So
You do get a few more download options. If you were really highly producing a lot of graphics that needed to be very like HD, I would maybe consider it because they do allow you to download them in bigger, less pixelated formats. Of course, for money. Yes, so we won't waste a lot of time on the animated icons since we can't really use them. I'm pretty sure enough, if I click one, it will just ask me to pay some money. So you might encounter that occasionally in the software if you do start using it. But they are pretty good at mentioning which things you might be prompted to pay for. Of course, very simple line insertion as well. I'm afraid it's going to put a black line in there and I won't be able to find it. Yes, that's not helpful. Well, there it is. Let me very quickly change the color on that. So the lines are, I don't know why they have it set up this way, but rather than just having all the lines you can pick from like they do the icons, you actually have to use these little tools at the top after you insert the line, and then you can change it to solid or make it larger or drag it and make it extend across the screen, anything like that. So if I could work for Pictochart, I would maybe suggest to them that they would make the line a little more intuitive, but it can be done, and I inserted way too many, so I'm just going to delete them. There we go. Okay, so that block isn't looking too bad. They do actually have a pretty good selection as well of stock photos, so you don't have to worry about the permissions on these. You can put them in any presentation you want. And again, they do have that controlled vocabulary, so you can start getting an idea of what kinds of topics you might be able to include. And they have this interesting thing as well called a photo frame. And they come with like a default photo included in them, so you can just use them as is, kind of as a little graphic. Or you can actually, let's see if I can find a good place to put one of these in. How about this guy? Loading your photo frame. I wonder if it put it at the top. Yes, it did. See, okay, see, I've broken one of my cardinal rules already. I was still editing this first block. So I actually failed to leave the block I was working on and click on a different block. So I'm going to come down here actually to this third block. And now I'm going to insert my item. And that is far too large. So I'm just going to drag it down because I want it to go in here somewhere. Line up with those. But then you can actually come back to these stock photos or to whatever you're working with and put them in these frames. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know where that goes best. Maybe up here in the corner. Kind of an interesting thing you can do. It kind of just cuts the photo to fit the frame. And there are some that are the shape of like letters and other interesting things. I honestly have not used these a whole lot, because I find it kind of hard to incorporate them with what I'm doing. But it's kind of a fun thing to experiment with. I end up more playing with them than really using them for anything in particular. Okay, any questions? I want to stop frequently enough that people have time for that. Yes?
I saw that in the photos there was a plus. Does that mean you can add your own photos at the top?
I believe you can. Let me make sure it's not a premium. Okay. I wanted to make sure they hadn't made it a premium feature. But we do have in here like some things we previously uploaded, like the Illinois iBlock logo, the old one. The old one. It's been in here too long. It looks like you you do get 40 millibytes of storage for free. So,
I
you
will
know,
say
pretend this
on-
isn't the wrong one, but
On my personal account, I have like almost 300 photos uploaded, and I still have space. So it takes a while to hit that cap.
mhm. So you can. I'm glad that they've kept that free because I think that's something they could very easily lock down and make a premium feature. So good eye. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Well, there's a few more fun features in here, so I'll move on to those. There is just a direct upload for photos here as well, which is why I kind of forgot about the feature you found because you can quickly do it this way as well. So this is the same menu we were just on. Background, pretty intuitive. You can change the background. What is different specifically in Piktochart is you can change the background either for just one block or for the entire thing. So it can be dangerous to start messing with the background on the blocks because then it can quickly turn into a circus. But you do have the option. You can do things like just add stripes or, ooh, that's not going to work at all. Stripes or dots, those are some little stars. So if I could find anything that didn't look horrid, that's not too bad. You can kind of augment the existing background. So definitely something to be careful with, but an option that's there.
I did not find this intuitive. I will say the ones that look more solid, so fully colored, you can't add your own background color. So like the kind of tealy one, yeah, that one works too. You can't add your own background color to those. If they're kind of more grayscaled,
like these here.
Yeah, that's where you can add your own background color. It took me like a month to figure that out. I don't know why, but it really did.
See, those are little ties. That's kind of cute. Yeah, so as Maisie mentioned, some of them are kind of transparent, almost films that you put over the color. I don't know if I can find one. This one looks like it must be solid. Yes. Of course, does not work at all. Anyway, let me just get rid of all of those. So I do find these harder to use on templates because the templates are already so set up, but they're really nice if you're just starting from scratch. I have found myself using some of the kind of subtly striped backgrounds quite a bit because they just add a little interest without being too overwhelming. You can change the background color to a very exact hex number. So if you're working with like branding standards or something like that, I mean, I guess we're all working with orange and blue here, but but you do have the option to have very specific color palettes. Of course, you can also just do the elementary school thing of just browsing around in the colors and picking whatever it is you like. But a lot of this, I think, is fairly intuitive. You can change the opacity of the background. I don't even know what would happen if I did that with this. I don't think it will let me. You're right.
You actually have to click the block itself before you change the opacity.
Oh, see there, I have some very light little stripes, so that's not too bad at all. Well, they're so light. Okay, you can't see them at all. That's okay.
If you do something more like the stars, would show up a little better.
Okay, there's a starry background, so I could make it a little more subtle. Are you folks able to see that? Here, I'll pick something very ugly. If I pick something really ugly, there you go. Now you can see. Yes. Okay. Let's see. I'm sorry, did you have a question? Or? Oh, no. I appreciate the natural light, actually. It's very nice. What else is in here? Okay, so we haven't talked at all about text, which we should talk about because it's one of the more important things that you should be using. Of course, it does have this kind of text box setup, so that's going to be very familiar for a lot of products you've probably used. Obviously, you can change the size, change the color and font. All of your text menu options are going to be here at the top, kind of like MS Word or any other word processing program. So here's your font size menu. Here's your font selector. They do have a pretty nice diversity of fonts, so I appreciate that.
One thing that If you can see up in the top, there's a little, it says like AA and there's a little line under it. That's actually where you'll do like your line spacing. So if you want it to be more like double spaced, it's actually through that section there rather than a more recognizable text tool.
That's a good point. Yes, if I have this text box here highlighted so I can change the line height, and it will stretch out my words there. So it's kind of, it just changes like the kerning on the letters almost, and then the line spacing, as Maisie mentioned. Of course, text alignment. I mean, there's really just about everything you could hope to do up here. Here's again the color with the hex value. Now, this is interesting and fairly unique to this program, is this lock button. So you can actually lock certain text boxes, items, anything like that, so that you can't accidentally move them. So I don't use the lock feature a lot, but I do see how it could be helpful if you had a piece that you'd finished and you didn't want to mess it up. So now that I've locked that, I really cannot do anything with it. And if I can manage to select it again, wow, there we go. Come on. Wow, I've locked it even from myself. That's impressive. Well, I'm going to undo that. Undo. Now it's unlocked. Magic. Okay. Anyway, that is an option. I will show you folks before we finish as well. There is a grouping option. And that can be pretty fun for attaching different elements together, and then they'll move in tandem. So it does have these options over here if you want to insert a new text box. Like, let's go down and find somewhere a little less busy. Oh, you know what? I keep forgetting my own rules, which is I just keep staying in the wrong box. Let's go down here again. Let's actually click on the block. There we go. So you can enter, when you enter one of these title, subtitle, it will be pre-formatted to kind of match that type of text. So that can just be a shortcut, so you don't have to be thinking about that every single time you want a new text box. And then there are these text frames, which are very similar to the photo frames. They're kind of little default, funny little quirky things. This is another feature I don't use a whole lot, but they are here. They are vectors, so you can make them as large or as tiny as you want, and they won't become pixelated. So that is very nice. But they're kind of almost like a little grouped text box with an icon. So did I make that large enough you folks can see? But
and like you can change the font and everything in them, but they're very preset and they're not searchable. So if
yes.
You're like, oh, I want to search for medical like we did before. You can't. And I don't know why they don't have that feature, but they don't. So that's a little obnoxious.
I have spent some time scrolling through here hoping for just the one that I want. And a couple times I've found it, but not always. So
if you're going for a camping theme, they have a lot of good ones.
Yes, or coffee.
Or coffee.
Birthday party. You never know. So if you want something a little more whimsical, it might be worth your time. But yes, a very interesting feature. I'm going to get rid of that one. It doesn't really match at all. I'm just kind of ruthless. There we go. Okay, so this is oh, did we get access to this? This is supposed to be a premium feature. So I don't think I'll actually show you folks this because you might fall in love with it. But
it's because you can create new color schemes.
They just offer some built-in ones. Okay. I was so excited for 1 second. They offer as a premium feature, they will like help curate color schemes for you. But I think maybe because we chose this template, it's offering us a few. So let's just see. There we go. That's why. See, every time I log into this program, something is different. It's always exciting. I really don't know that I like any of these better, but they do have some options for you. So yes, but the rest of that you would have to pay. I don't even know quite how it works, but
it's a monthly fee. It's not too bad, but it's worth it.
Sorry, I just meant the color scheme thing.
Sorry. Yeah,
no, that's
they,
okay.
They offer you, like, if you choose a color, it'll offer you, like, select this color. It'll go well as a highlight and stuff like that, which is fine. But again, it's kind of fun to select your own colors. So.
And then the last section I really wanted to show off is this tools section. So this is really, if you're working with like numeric data, this is really where you can make that shine. Because they do have a pretty robust built-in chart building system. It's not quite as good as maybe like PowerPoint, but it's up there, I would say. I'm going to add a fresh block here at the very bottom so that I can go into this charts option right here. And it brings up its own little dialog box. And they have about a dozen different types of charts over here. So I've actually used it before for the donut charts, and I thought they worked pretty well. You know, they're kind of just a prettier pie graph, I suppose. But it does have this, it's so hard to see. I don't know why those lines are so light, but they do have this kind of built-in Excel-looking functionality. You can use this import if you have something in Excel format, so that can be nice. I haven't tried to do anything super extreme, so I don't know how complicated your data could get, but I don't know if you have opinions on that.
Pretty complicated. I will say the dot matrix is my favorite one because you can change the icons pretty easily. That one, yeah. You can change the icons pretty easily, and I've done like little people before, like 8 out of 10 to disagree. So it's very fun.
Yeah, any of the charts there are here with the gear. You can select all the settings. So the colors, and as Maisie mentioned, you should be able to change the shapes. And if you pick customize, you can actually browse their icon library and use just about anything. So we could use puppies. So yeah, I agree with Maisie. This can be really fun. I mean, maybe you're counting chickens. I don't know. It's a really great way to just very quickly visualize something. And then when you hit insert, and I did not pick a good color scheme, so please ignore me, but it will just pop it right into your graphic, and you can place it wherever you need. And once again, I do believe there are vectors, so we can make our chickens very large. And there they are. And there is a key down here at the bottom, and I believe that you can actually, oh, excuse me. Maybe you can explain.
Yeah, you can change the location of the key or the legend, as well as really kind of customize it as needed with those sorts of elements.
So the library resources page lists other infographic software, e.g. Visme and Infogram. Is one better for certain kinds of data or applications? Do you like PictoChart the best?
I love PictoChart. I just think it's fun. I think if you're doing more like GIS data, others can be better. I think Visme tends to be a little better for that. But I think it really depends on what you're trying to do.
If you're working on something very specific, it might not be terrible to experiment with each of them and just kind of see what works best for you.
But
you might have more opinions.
Yeah, but PictoChart, as far as making infographics, I think is a little better. But something like Visme is a little better if you're doing more data visualization and less like presentation. So I think that's kind of the main difference there.
And I do feel like Canva is a little better for like social media stuff, even though I know how much you like PictoChart. So that's a good question. I think there's not a perfect answer, but I will just briefly show off the maps function before we run out of time too much. It isn't very fine-grained. We've had people wish that they could do counties or cities or things like that, and it's just not that sophisticated. But if you are working with a specific population or area of the world, it can be kind of fun. So let's just say Bahamas for some reason. And you can kind of change the colors on things and add more visualization options. So I guess the Bahamas aren't very fleshed out, so it's a little hard to see. But Let's go back and pick something with a little more structure. How about Belize? So then, of course, you can change the color to match your theme. You can do anything you please. Give ourselves a blue border here. And it does have a very similar graph function to the charts, so that you can change specific values, and when you hover over it will show you what those values are. And so if I go ahead and insert, it's going to go on top of my chickens, so I'm going to move them out of the way. But here's Belize. And this is why Piktochart really does shine in the digital sphere, because now you would lose that hover population functionality if you did try to have it some other way. So I think we've just about gotten through the whole interface. So we have about 5 minutes. And I did want to take just a little time to show you kind of how to save, download, share, do all those kinds of things once you've actually finished your masterpiece. Unless there's any other questions before we get to that point. Okay. You folks are such a great audience. I love it. So you can preview. Makes a lot of sense. You can just see what it looks like without all the extra accoutrement on the edge. There is a download option. This is what is somewhat, it's a little hogtied in the free version, I will say. You can download it. It does have to be a PNG, and I would always pick the medium quality because that's the best quality they will let you have. It will download. It will have a Piktochart watermark. So if you'll notice on our handout, we are good people. We did not delete their watermark. Theoretically, you could cut it off. I'm not going to recommend that as a representative of the library. Just so you know how that happens. So that is how you can save it and distribute it as we have done. If you don't want to do that and you want to have it more on a website or available for people to look at, of course there's a share button. And it will give you, it won't give us a very nice URL because I named it practice. So let's name it something a little more unique. Let's try Prairie Research Institute. Now when we share, it will give you a friendly URL that isn't too bad, that you can embed, include in email distributions, whatever it is you want to do. And I'm going to publish it. And then you can actually choose who has access to that link. So you could share things internally. Although I don't know in what situation I would make a lovely Piktochart and then only let people see it. And then let no one see it. But yeah, you can make it so only you can see it, or you can make it public, basically.
Right, but once you share it, you can go back in and change the permissions, right? Because I can see doing it for people who send the link if you want feedback.
That's true.
So you can go in and edit and then publish it for everybody once it's final.
That is true.
So you can change that pretty easily. It's under, I believe, should be on your dashboard. That's the easiest way to change it, but I guess also under just share.
Yeah, that's where I normally do it, is just right here. But if you do, I don't think there's a stop date, an end date. We have some that we've had a long time and they're still there. So if there is an official one, I have not come across it. Yes, until.
The downside with using commercial software like this is if the company vanishes, which I mean it does happen.
Yeah, until Piktochart goes under, I guess. Or they change their program so drastically that you can't get your old materials anymore, which has happened to us with other programs. So you might download a backup just in case. This is what it looks like if it gets sent to you, though. It'll have the kind of sidebar interface piece going on. But of course, you can scroll, and if I come all the way down to my Belize, I can still see my extra information about that graphic. And it does actually have analytics now for view tracking. So if you are distributing these, maybe you want an idea of how many people are looking at them. Okay. And then, of course, you can do things like duplicate one that you've already made, and from inside the program, you can just start over now that you've finished. And anytime you want to go back to your dashboard, this little P logo up here in the left, and now we can see our most recent project here in the corner. So we really have this timed out to be a 50-minute workshop. I guess we hit it right on the nose. So we will probably leave it at that unless there's anything else we can do for your folks today. But we really appreciate your time and attention, and I hope the folks online were able to hear us sufficiently, and hopefully now you have a new tool that you at least know is out there. Thank you for having us.
Just want to remind everybody that our next workshop in this series is going to be February 26th. That's a Monday, and it's going to be on visualizing your research using story maps. So if you're interested in doing more robust geographic information, that would be a good one to tune in for. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time, hopefully.